Good afternoon and welcome to everyone. My name is Judith Hearn and I'm the Deputy Minister in the Office of Women and Gender Equality. I'll be the MC for today's event and I'm so glad that you could all be here to mark this meaningful day with us. Just some general reminders at the beginning, some housekeeping notes before we get started. If you could please wear your masks unless speaking at the podium or performing. Closed captioning and sign language interpretation are available today and will be shown on the screens. And our washrooms can be found just to my right. There are 2 doors here, through those doors and down the hallway. We know that today's ceremony could be a little emotional and in some cases quite difficult for guests. If you feel at any point that you need a quiet place to sit and reflect for a few minutes, or a quiet place to talk to a friend, we've arranged for a quiet room. That room is just down the hall over by the security desk at the back. And if you feel that you'd like to talk with someone today, we've also arranged with our employee assistance program to have a couple of counselors here on site, and they are accessible at any point in time. They're sitting at the back of the room, Claudette Morris and Kim Jordan. Claudette and Kim, maybe you'd raise your hand, just here. The Purple Ribbon Campaign was created to raise awareness about gender-based violence in our community and to inspire action in violence prevention. We are proud that we are raising the Purple Ribbon flag once again. It will be flown on our courtesy flagpole outside of the Confederation Building for 16 days to coincide with the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. To officially mark the beginning of our ceremony today, I'd like to call on Mi'kmaq Elder Marjorie Muse. Marjorie Muse sits on the Elders Advisory Board with Empowering Indigenous Women for Stronger Communities. She's a dedicated community advocate and it is a part of First Voice's working group on the calls for action for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Marjorie strives for gender equality and is often called upon by community to pass down teachings and knowledge. And we're very pleased that Marjorie could join us today to share an opening prayer.
Alan. Thank you. Gwainin Deloise Marjorie Muse. Hello, my name is Marjorie Muse and my spirit name is Running Deer. I would like to acknowledge Honourable Andrew Furry, Premier of Newfoundland, Labrador, and Honourable Pam Parsons, Minister of Women and Gender Equality, and invited guests and community. Alan for inviting me here today to do an opening prayer for the Purple Ribbon Ceremony. I am honored to be here. Welcome, everybody. We are gathered to participate in a flag-raising ceremony to stand against gender-based violence. Creator, Canada and people all around the world are facing unacceptable violence and discrimination. We have missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and people of diverse gender, two-spirited LGBTQIA+ peoples who face acts of violence every day. And since the pandemic, gender-based violence has been on the rise. We need calls for action immediately, and the conversation has to start. Creator, we pray for the victims and the victims' families. We also would like to pray for the survivors. We thank the survivors for having the courage and resilience for coming forward to tell their stories. I am a survivor of sexual assault, child assault, and domestic violence. It takes lots of courage and a very brave person to feel safe enough to share their story. Creator, we need a Canada free of violence. You might be thinking to yourself, that is impossible, but I feel it could happen. Creator, we need to start the conversation today, and we need to continue to educate and start with our leaders. They need to go into our communities and hear the stories of our people. Really listen to understand. Until they hear the voices and stories of these survivors, then they could go back into their offices with community members, elders, knowledge keepers, when deciding calls for action to end all forms of violence. We pray for the families who lost their loved ones at the hands of a person they once trusted and loved. Families have adopted the purple ribbon to remember and honor their loved ones that they have lost, who lost their lives. Shelters use the purple ribbon to raise awareness about crimes of domestic violence in their communities. Purple ribbons conveys a powerful message that there is no place for domestic violence in homes, in neighborhoods, workplaces, or schools. Creator, we pray for our young people. We know that in Newfoundland, over half of our school children experience bullying. These are the issues that are going unnoticed and not being addressed today. Creator, 1 in every 4 women and 1 in every 7 men will experience some form of domestic violence. Isn't that sad? And most go unreported. 85% are women. We need change. We need action. We need more awareness, more education. We need to care more. We need to listen to understand, really listen. Creator, wouldn't it be a great world if a gender-equal society will be one where the word gender does not exist? Where everybody can be themselves? Gender equality is a human issue. It affects us all. It is critical to the development and peace of every nation that we end gender violence. Creator, change our hearts and give us the wisdom, love, knowledge, and the understanding to be the change today. Walalan, walalilok. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marjorie. These opening reflections are so important as we seek for truth and reconciliation in our province and strive for cultural acceptance and humility. It's my privilege now to ask the Honourable Pam Parsons, Minister of our department, the Office of Women and Gender Equality, to come forward to the podium.
Thank you, Judith, and thank you, Marjorie. Welcome, special guests. Premier Fury was scheduled to be with us here today, but he sends his regrets because his presence is needed, of course, on the West Coast due to the ongoing weather-related emergency. We are here today to raise the Purple Ribbon flag and sign a proclamation to mark the start of the Purple Ribbon campaign, a 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Violence against women and girls and gender-diverse individuals is a very serious social, economic, cultural, legal, and political issue that has devastating impacts on victims, families, and communities. According to Statistics Canada, women are overrepresented as victims of intimate partner violence, and accounting for almost 8 in 10 victims. Indigenous women and girls and two-spirited individuals experience violence disproportionately in our province and our country. The historical and continuing trauma felt by the Indigenous peoples of Newfoundland and Labrador resulting from this disproportionate level and severity of violence requires immediate government action. In Canada, Indigenous women are over 3 times more likely to be a victim of a violent crime than non-Indigenous women. And the odds of being a victim of violence are 2 times higher among lesbian, gay, or bisexual Canadians than among their heterosexual counterparts. Members of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community and other marginalized groups experience violence in significant ways with lasting implications that are far-reaching and pervasive. These statistics represent real people facing real hurt, pain, suffering, and too often death. It is critical that we work together to address the inequalities that perpetuate violence in our communities. And let me make it clear, gender-based violence is not acceptable, and it will not be tolerated, and it has no place here in Newfoundland and Labrador or across our country. I am honored to be present today with these many advocates, survivors, and family members in the room who know firsthand of the impact of gender-based violence. We all share the conviction that change is needed in our province. Together, we need to ensure that our mothers, our sisters, our brothers, and friends never have to experience violence and suffering because of their gender, or because of their sexual orientation, or their identity, or their culture. As Minister responsible for women and gender equality, I feel very passionately about my role in helping to prevent gender-based violence. And this includes calling out inequalities when I see them and inequities, leading by example in my personal interactions, demonstrating that every individual is deserving of respect, and working with my government colleagues to action real change. In recent years, through an all-government approach, we certainly have made amendments to legislation, regulations, and policies that help both prevent violence and support survivors of violence in our province. Most recently, as more support services were needed during the COVID-19 pandemic and its associated lockdowns and isolation measures, we launched the Domestic Violence Helpline in partnership with Transition House Association of Newfoundland and Labrador, which provides immediate phone or text support to those who are experiencing domestic violence or intimate partner violence here in our province. While I can point out that what we've done and what we'll continue to do to create safe communities for women and gender diverse individuals, that doesn't take away from the pain or the loss and the reality that many in our communities face from their lived experience with gender-based violence. There is more work to be done, and government certainly is listening to the needs of our communities. Many of our community partners have been doing incredible work to prevent and end gender-based violence. Quadrangle recently hosted a panel discussion and information fair focused on anti-violence. The Multicultural Women's Organization held a workshop on the prevention and elimination of gender-based violence. St. John's Status of Women Council and the St. John's Women's Centre have launched Empowering Them, a free online community course about gender-based violence, and Violence Prevention Avalon East is launching a new program focused on men and boys and the role they play in preventing gender-based violence. This is necessary work that should be amplified throughout our communities to reinforce our message. Everyone has a role to play to ending gender-based violence: government, community, and men and boys. Our aim as a provincial government is to support initiatives that directly target the cycles of violence and work to decrease the social normalization of violence. This includes work that directly targets men and boys and gets to the root causes of inequalities in our society and to address the perpetuation of violence in our communities. It is essential that our collective and collaborative gender-based violence prevention efforts are informed by research, lived experience, and best practices, and that we find innovative systemic solutions that will indeed lead to systems change, not just Band-Aid fixes. When I look around the room today, I see many faces of people who have been deeply impacted by gender-based violence. I see the faces of individuals who are currently experiencing gender-based violence. I see the faces of survivors of gender-based violence. And I see the faces of those who will experience gender-based violence at some point in their life. I see the faces of family members who are mourning the loss of loved ones due to gender-based violence. And I see the faces of passionate advocates and leaders working daily to support survivors and create the systemic change needed to prevent gender-based violence in our province. I stand here today as a woman, as an ally, and as a believer that we can indeed prevent and end gender-based violence. It will take time, it will take collaboration, and it will take a renewed urgency that includes all of us. But it is necessary to create long-term change that creates a safer province for each and every one of us right here in Newfoundland and Labrador and across our great country. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I'd now like to ask Debbie Hibbs, mother of Julianne Hibbs and violence prevention advocate, to address us.
Before I start, I would like to add some good news we had today. I would like to add that the Purple Ribbon flag raising event was held in our hometown of Conception Bay South this morning. It's a beautiful ceremony. And we are pleased that our town is recognizing this important event and what it signifies. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of my husband and myself, I want to thank the Honourable Premier Andrew Furey, Minister Pam Parsons, and the office responsible for gender, women and gender equality for supporting us in raising the Purple Ribbon flag in awareness of domestic and gender violence. This flag represents all the young girls, women and men whose lives were taken from them because of gender violence. It is also there to remind us that the issue of domestic and relationship violence is very prevalent in our society today, not just in Newfoundland and Labrador, but all over the world. This flag coincides with the Purple Ribbon campaign, and it will fly for the 16 days of activism on gender violence, and the Confederation will be lit in purple today. We are the first province in Canada to fly this flag, and I am hoping all other provinces will follow suit. This is our 6th year now for the Purple Ribbon flag. Thank you, everyone, for coming out today and showing your support. My name is Debbie, and I am the mother of Julianne Hibbs. We lost our daughter to domestic and relationship violence on October the 15th, 2013, 8 years ago, along with her fiancé, Vincent. Julianne was waiting to see her doctor at the medical clinic in CBS, while Vinnie waited in their vehicle for her. Murder of your child or loved one has got to be the worst of anything that can ever happen in your life. How someone can take the life of someone else is unimaginable. It can never be righted. We can never bring our daughter Julianne back, nor her fiancé Vincent, who was an indirect result of domestic relationship violence. Our nightmare started when Julianne was only 16 years old. It has now been 27 years. We are exhausted. What our family has been through is unimaginable, especially to anyone who has not lived this horror. But how could anyone perceive what they haven't gone through? That is why I need to tell our story, so that people who are in these unhealthy relationships know what can happen. Luckily, not all relationships end like Julianne's did, but violence always has that potential. Murder is not something you think is going to happen to you or your family, but it can. It happened to us. To some, it might seem like I am being repetitive, but I know what can happen, and this is why I am speaking out on domestic relationship and gender violence, to inform the public in hopes our tragedy will save someone else's life. When this was happening to us, we went everywhere to get help. The police was one such resource where we expected help to get our daughter out of a serious situation, where she was being controlled by a much older person. Surely above anyone else, the police could and would help us and Julianne. She was not just a teenager gone with her boyfriend, as one such officer insinuated. He probably did not understand the depth of our situation. Here is a typical example of judgment that was so wrong. There were some police officers who did try to help us in some ways, but their hands were tied. One such police officer who took it beyond her duties, but within the law, was Inspector Connie Pike, a friend to this day. But her resources were limited and her hands were tied also. The system failed Julianne, and the system failed us. The resources should have been there to help us. We had no rights as parents. The perpetrator had all the rights. This is a real-life story that ultimately took Julianne's life, and Vinny's. They should not be dead. Almost 30 years later now for us, what changes have taken place? Minimal changes at best. Lives are still being taken due to gender violence. So how can we protect ourselves against domestic relationship and gender-based violence? How can we protect our children and society? Educating ourselves on the dynamics of gender and relationship violence is the key here. At a very early age, we need to teach our children at home about healthy and unhealthy relationships and bullying. This education needs to be continued in schools from kindergarten up through grade 12 and beyond. Regulations need to be put in place regarding the age of majority and clarified. Measures put into place when a person is in a position of trust. What screening is used here? More regulations need to be put in place regarding the ownership of guns. Gender violence is happening all over the globe, encompassing people from all walks of life. People are people, and all people are different. We all come from different backgrounds, color, race, religion, and professions. It's happening in the home, churches, schools, the military, even policing. The list goes on and on regarding gender violence. It seems like the people in charge, in power, are very often part of the problem. All we have to do is turn on the TV, and it's there in front of you every day. That, to me, is very discerning. I don't really see any noticeable changes in the 8 years my husband and I have been advocating for change to do with domestic relationship and gender-based violence. One such case in the news recently is the murder of Victoria Head. The judge was reported as saying, and I quote, "There are times, thankfully rare, when otherwise good people do terrible things. This is one such occasion." End of quote. How could a person of the law, officer of the courts, make such a comment? Who is the victim here? It was disturbing hearing the judge respond in this way when a family lost their daughter, who was also a mother, to such a horrific act of violence, murder. This crime of murder comes with a life sentence, but with that sentencing comes the possibility of parole in 10 years. Is this what her life was worth? This sends a very cold and insensitive message as to how gender violence is being acted upon. This family will never have their daughter back, and their granddaughter is left without a mother. Victoria will never have a second chance at life. They will never have justice, no matter what sentence he is given. But that does not mean her life is expendable. Murdering someone cannot be taken back. It's forever. And the family that is left behind will never be the same again. I know. We live it every day. It is heartbreaking. As I said earlier, it's been 8 years now that Julianne was taken from us forever. It seems like yesterday. Life goes on. But I am stuck in that moment. I cannot believe I have lived through 8 years. Where has that time gone? Dying and murder are not the same. Gender violence in murder, resulting in murder, certainly has to be looked in a way that crime does not pay. Jail time with the possibility of parole in 10 years to live your life over is not a deterrent to murdering someone. There also needs to be more than just time served. Our loved ones did not get a second chance, and the families don't get a second chance. I would also like to mention the Jane Doe case, telling her story 3 times. What does it take, or who does it take, to listen to someone when they come forward to tell their story about gender violence? In this case, sexual assault. We are telling victims to come forward, break the silence. But look what this poor girl was put through. Perpetrators depend on your silence. It gives them more power. I hope this does not deter victims from coming forward. I hope what happened will be the beginning of change to come, if the justice system is really listening. People in a position of trust, people who are supposed to uphold the law and protect us, where is the justice for the victim here? I would like to remember Lisa and her family today, whose daughter Courtney has still not been found. And I would also like to remember all the families who have also lost a loved one to murder. Now, I would like to share some information. I heard on the news recently about the Canadian Women's Foundation that came up with the silent hand signal aimed at helping those who might be in a dangerous situation at home while in lockdown. This was launched in April 2020. By July 2020, 1 in 3 people in Canada heard of this signal for help or saw it being used. This is it. It went viral all over the world. Such a simple gesture, but it saved a 16-year-old girl's life just a couple of weeks ago. Amazing. A young girl from North Carolina was abducted. Someone saw her make the signal from a vehicle and took the time to recognize that she was in distress, and it saved her life. Also, there is a new course now that's available online regarding gender violence that was launched by the St. John's Status of Women Council. This is designed to provide people with the skills needed to respond to situations where gender-based violence may be occurring. This is great news. We will always need awareness and education regarding domestic relationships and gender violence, but awareness is not enough. Government needs to make this a priority and put measures in place to protect us. This is our right as citizens, to live in a safe environment. We all need to work together to protect each other and do everything we can to protect our loved ones. Violence affects everyone. We all have a part to play, no matter how big or small. Educate yourselves, be aware, don't judge others. We never truly know what someone else is going through. Be kind. There's just one more point from a personal note that I want to share with you today before closing. Julianne's Rock. This is it. You can't see it, but it's written in green. She wrote it there, strength and courage. When Julianne managed to get away from her abusive situation and was back in our lives again, we went to some counseling sessions. When those sessions were coming to an end, our counselor asked us to summarize what we had been through and what our counseling sessions meant to us, what effect they had on us, especially Julianne, in helping us all to move forward. She then asked us to pick a stone from a jar and write that summary in 2 words, one on each side of the stone. Julianne chose the words strength and courage. There are no more truer words than this to describe Julianne. For she certainly had the strength to live through the years of abuse and then the courage to get away from it. They say the most dangerous time for a victim of violence and abuse is when the victim leaves their abuser and their violent situation. This is so true. My husband Philip and I must have been blind or just too caught up in our happiness over Julianne being home. We thought this was all over. We thought Julianne was now safe. We were wrong, so very wrong. Julianne was not safe. Julianne and her fiancé Vincent Dillon were tracked and followed by him, and both were murdered by him at the Villanova Medical Center in her home of CBS. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hibbs, for sharing your thoughts, your passion, and your lived experience with us today. And perhaps for everyone in the room, before we move forward, we'll just bow our heads and take a moment to honor everyone who has been lost through gender-based violence. To follow on, we all know now is the time for action, and our community partners have demonstrated what is possible through a prevention-based approach to ending violence. Today, we are joined by Martha Muzechka, an award-winning researcher on gender equity and violence prevention advocate with more than 30 years of experience. Martha has carried out a number of research projects for both government and community to inform policy development and social change using community development, diversity, and gender equity principles. A portion of Martha's work over the last year has been supporting Violence Prevention Avalon East with their creation of a new program titled Navigating New Norms of Masculinity. This program is aimed at shifting societal norms about men and boys and highlighting the important role that men and boys play in preventing gender-based violence. I'd like to invite Martha now to join us to tell us more about the project.
Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Minister, invited guests, friends, and colleagues. It's hard to believe that 2 years ago I stood here and letting you know that we were launching this new initiative with the generous support from the Merby's calendar. And so it is really my privilege and honor to be here today to announce our new program, Navigating New Norms of Masculinity, before you today. Our project has been designed to empower and encourage men to become engaged in violence prevention. We believe then and we believe now that this work will take apart the toxic and harmful definitions of masculinity and will help create a safe and secure environment for all residents of Newfoundland and Labrador. Our goal is to challenge negative attitudes of masculinity and as a result empower men to become meaningfully engaged in violence prevention. We have always known that if we are to encourage successful changes in behavior, we must first change attitudes. There is a lack of programming for men and boys appropriate to various social locations and intersectional lived experiences. Programs seldom address those at highest risk of perpetrating gender-based violence. We are surrounded online, in person, in media, by messages which support and enforce traditional male gender roles that expect boys and men to show few emotions and to assert their dominance over those society sees as powerless or without status. Our new program is specifically focused on boys and young men aged 5 to age 20. We have divided the content to meet the developmental and emotional needs of different age groups, and we have also included guidelines on using this content for girls and young women, mixed groups, recognizing that issues of consent, gender norms, and emotions cross all ages and genders. With the guidance and assistance of a great community of passionate and dedicated advocates, we conceived of a program that would be delivered in face-to-face sessions. However, as a result of the pandemic, we adjusted and created tools which can be used in both virtual and in-person environments. To support this shift, we also created a facilitation guide based on best practices in online facilitation and education. Delivering the program requires no special equipment except for virtual sessions, which will require laptops and access to Wi-Fi. However, the exercises we have created can be done with paper, pencil, markers, index cards, simple things you have on hand. They are designed to encourage discussion, to think critically, and to gain insight into personal behaviors and reactions. Our program content focuses on 3 themes: boundaries and consent, where we practice respect and dignity and support understanding and validating consent; challenging gender norms and stereotyping, where we look to analyze expectations about behavior, recognizing and valuing new norms; and managing big feelings, where we look at our experience of emotions, especially anger, identify our triggers, and create positive responses to deal with anger and strong feelings appropriately. Each age-specific module addresses those 3 themes. Program facilitators can mix and match activities, building a program that can be tailored to their audience's particular needs. In our research, we heard very clearly that formal presentations and long speeches do not work well with our key audiences of children and youth, especially with topics they may find uncomfortable or awkward. We use a variety of activities focused on generating discussion designed to move them from objective observations through emotional connections to creating and adopting new approaches to changing behavior and understanding. Over the next couple of months, as we roll out this new program with the regional coordinating committees, we will also be adding additional material concerning the specific needs and concerns of Indigenous, new immigrant, transgender, and non-binary communities. We will also be piloting a Train the Trainer workshop in the spring to help regional committees bring the program to a wider audience of potential facilitators in schools, community centers, and youth-serving agencies and organizations. I am especially thankful for the generous input of the staff of the regional coordinating committees, the community advocates, and the educators here in this province. Their guidance has been so valuable in making this project happen. Engaging men in violence prevention is always in the best interest of women and girls, but we cannot forget that ending gender-based violence is also in the best interest of men and boys. Violence prevention cannot be achieved in any substantive manner in isolation of men. Together, we have the ability to foster great change, and we are looking forward to doing this work with you in community. Thank you. Be safe. Stay well.
Thank you, Martha, for telling us about that very important work. As part of our Purple Ribbon campaign, Minister Parsons is going to officially sign a proclamation. So, Minister, if I could ask you to come up and sit here and sign the proclamation while I read it. The proclamation reads, "Whereas the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador's violence prevention work is based on a vision that the people of our province will live in safe, caring communities where there's an inherent respect for each other and violence of any sort is unacceptable, and whereas the Provincial Purple Ribbon Campaign runs annually from November 25th, International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, through to December 6th, National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women, ending December 10th, encompassing the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And whereas the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence is an international campaign designed to develop strategies to increase international awareness of the systemic nature of gender-based violence. And whereas gender-based violence devastates those who love and support women and gender-diverse individuals, as well as relationships, families, communities, neighborhoods, workplaces, schools, villages, cities, and towns the world over. And whereas the Provincial Purple Ribbon Campaign provides an opportunity for individuals, Indigenous groups and organizations, community organizations, and governments to work together in solidarity and draw upon this period of heightened attention to gain support for local efforts to eliminate gender-based violence. And whereas the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador stands in solidarity with organizations worldwide who desire change for a better, more equal, and more just world for women and gender-diverse individuals. And whereas it is only through raising awareness and changing attitudes that gender-based violence can be stopped and prevented, therefore be it resolved that the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador does hereby proclaim November 25th to December 10th as the Purple Ribbon Campaign to prevent gender-based violence against women and gender-diverse individuals in Newfoundland and Labrador. Thank you, Minister. Minister, I'll have you stay up here now. It's now time to raise the Purple Ribbon flag, to raise awareness of violence against women, and today's flag raising is the ongoing legacy of important advocacy work of the Hibbs family. As we heard today from Mrs. Hibbs' compelling words, Debbie and Philip Hibbs are the parents of Julianne, who was murdered along with her fiancé, Vince Dillon, by Julianne's ex-partner. The Hibbs have turned their personal tragedy into a dedicated effort for the prevention of violence against women and gender-diverse individuals. Please, I would ask Mr. and Mrs. Hibbs to now join Minister to raise the purple ribbon flag. Mr. and Mrs. Hibbs. The purple ribbon flag will be raised on our courtesy flagpole outside of the Confederation Building just after today's service. For anyone who wishes, please feel free to take a look after our proceedings. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to introduce a performance by Deanthe Edmonds. Deanthe Edmonds is Canada's first and only professional classical singer. Deanthe is a proud resident of Newfoundland and Labrador. She has performed on stages around the world. She's a two-time Dora Award-nominated performer and is in much demand as a singer, actor, and collaborator in both Indigenous and non-Indigenous projects. Among her many achievements and accolades, Deanthe is a member of the Canadian Opera Company's Circle of Artists and is a laureate of the prestigious Natition Foundation Reveal Indigenous Art Awards. I'm honored to present Deanthe Edmonds singing Legacy, a song she wrote in honor of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and gender-diverse people. Ms. Edmonds.
No matter how long, how near, how far, led by sister sun or the North Star, you will be found, we'll sing you home, your beautiful spirit not left to roam. Sister, I feel you walking with me. I hear your voice on the breeze, and I know that you will always be more than a memory, alive like the wind flying free. Left us a legacy. Hold on to your history. Write a new plot, dance, drum. Do not forget, it's never too late to rise and resonate. Ipinyavahit pisukattivahit, tu savahit anugimit. much goodbye. Sister, I feel you walking with me. I hear your voice on the breeze, and I know that you will always be more than a memory, alive like the wind flying free. I feel you walking with me. I hear your voice on the breeze, and I know that you will always be more than a memory, alive like the wind flying free. At sunang ilagot.
Nakunik.
Thank you, Ms. Edmonds, for that beautiful and compelling performance. What a beautiful tribute and compelling call to action, which is very fitting for today's ceremony. To conclude our event today, I would like to ask Marjorie Muse to come forward again for a closing prayer and to thank everyone for joining us and being a part of today's important event.
Well, Alan, to everybody who came out today to support and to continue the conversation about gender violence. I'd like to leave you with this. I am a woman, and I wish I could say this without causing me fear, that I'm not weary of this body, of what it's been through, of what they might do. I am a woman, and I love being one. But why does this mean I have to receive less? Why can't you freely voice your opinions, while mine I always have to suppress? I am a woman, and I have my own unique style and preferences. I want to be able to go out wearing what I love without fearing the consequences. I am a woman. Why do you shame me for that? Being a woman doesn't make me less of a person, nor does it make me your prey. I have a right to feel safe when I walk around by myself. I am a woman. Yes, I am. But before that, I'm also a human being, just like you, and all humans deserve to be treated with the same respect, because regardless of gender or race, each one of us and everyone here today and all around the world has the right to feel safe. Lalan.
That concludes our event today. Thank you to everyone. And I know that all will keep in mind the 16 days of activism and look to the purple ribbon as you drive past. Thank you.